recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in very strong support of H.R. 4771, the Small Bank Holding Company Relief Act of 2018. It is a bipartisan bill which passed our committee with a strong bipartisan vote of 41 to 14. And Mr. Speaker, this exact same provision came out of the Senate Banking Committee also with a very strong bipartisan vote of 16 to 7. First, I want to thank the gentlelady from Utah, Ms. Love, who is a very hardworking member of the Financial Services Committee. I want to thank her for introducing this legislation and helping lead our congressional efforts to provide regulatory relief to our nation's community banks. She is a great asset to our committee and widely respected. The Federal Reserve Small Bank Holding Company Policy Statement is a regulation that allows certain bank holding companies that have less than $1 billion in assets to hold more debt at the holding company level than would otherwise be permitted by current capital requirements. They do this as long as they meet a number of ongoing requirements and restrictions. H.R. 4771 would raise that threshold for qualifying institutions from $1 billion to $3 billion, thus allowing more community banks to raise more capital by the issuance of debt. By increasing this threshold, H.R. 4771 provides much-needed relief for bank holding companies from overly burdensome capital and leverage requirements that were truly intended, Mr. Speaker, for the largest and most complex global financial institutions. It is a reoccurring problem, Mr. Speaker. Again, over and over, the regulatory burden on our community financial institutions are causing us to lose one approximately every other day in America. These are rules that have made it, again, more difficult for small banks to raise capital. And while the bank holding companies will no longer have to abide by these rules under this bill, again, there are plenty of safeguards that continue to be in place to protect the safety and soundness of the institution and its customers, but these institutions present no threat to the safety and soundness of our financial system. First and foremost, the Federal Reserve retains the right to impose capital standards on a holding company if they determine it is needed. In other words, this is a may bill and not a shall bill. The $3 billion threshold remains totally within the discretion of the Federal Reserve. It is permissive. Next, capital regulations will continue to apply to the subsidiary banks of the holding company level. Again, let me repeat, the capital rules and regulations continue to apply to subsidiary banks. All institutions must continue to meet certain qualitative requirements, including those pertaining to non-banking activities, off-balance sheet activities, and publicly registered debt and equity. These requirements ensure that the higher leverage the policy statement allows does not pose any undue burden on subsidiary depository institutions. So the Small Bank Holding Company Relief Act will indeed make it easier for small hometown community banks to raise capital. And as they raise more capital, they can turn it into more Main Street jobs, more economic growth, more home ownership opportunities for our constituents. In fact, passing this bill will immediately benefit community banks all across America. Not the big banks, not Wall Street banks, as I have no doubt the ranking member will say in her remarks. But again, it will be community banks that will benefit. And if you don't believe me, ask them. Ask the Independent Community Bankers of America and its 5,700 community bank members. As a matter of fact, the passage of this bill, Ms. Love's bill, has been an important, long-standing goal of the Independent Community Bankers of America because they have been suffering and suffocated by an avalanche of red tape with massive increases in regulatory burdens, which has caused consolidation with much larger competitors. Because of increased regulation and compliance costs, again, many of them have found it difficult to access and raise capital. This is the capital that is needed to capitalize our small businesses. Small businesses are struggling for access to credit, and the incredible burden placed on home buyers has simply complicated the buying process. And these higher costs are being felt at the same time that paychecks are only now beginning to grow for working families thanks to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. But just don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. Let's listen to just one community banker who happens to be from West Virginia. And they wrote in and said, quote, "What no one in a position of power seems to realize is that many customers in our country prefer to deal with a smaller hometown institution with people they know and trust. If a customer has a question about their loan or their deposit, they simply pick up the phone and call or drop by. If we don't know the answer, we find out and we let them know as soon as possible. But it appears that Congress and the administration are attempting to get rid of smaller institutions so there are a lot fewer institutions to deal with, and those are the large ones who are too big to fail." And, Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what happened under the Dodd-Frank Act. Continue to quote, "Please just try to remember that small financial institutions and small businesses are the heart of America. The American dream is to work hard, learn, and make a good life for yourself and your family. In the meantime, it includes working in your community or neighborhood to help others out. Even as a small institution as ours, we sponsor Little League baseball teams, soccer teams, the county junior fair, and many other activities. We realize if we don't support local small businesses, they soon won't be here." Those words could have been written by almost any community financial institution in America, Mr. Speaker, and they ring so true. In order to keep our small communities alive, we have to keep their small businesses alive, and we must keep their small banks alive. So, again, it is so important that we enact H.R. 47-71, that we reduce this red tape on our community financial institutions. I thank the gentlelady from Utah for introducing the legislation. I reserve the balance.